Hello, this is our introduction to web devs and lean startups. This is ideation, creation, and leveraging web development to launch new businesses or new lean startups. My name is Paul Woodhead. I'm from Nowhere's IT, and this is part of the Midi Digi project at the Lighthouse at Middleton. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at agile methodology. So agile enables startups to launch a minimum viable product quickly, or an MVP. So we start off with a concept. So we've got a basic idea of a goal that we're identifying, a core problem that we need to provide a solution for. We have our inception. So we've established our goal. We've got a clear roadmap to build or prototype our MVP. We then have the construction phase where we develop it and we iterate it. So we go through it a few times. So each different iterations are sort of slightly new version of the one before. And, we're building it incrementally and testing continuously. Then we release it. So we deploy our iteration live to end users and monitor performance like UX, how people are using it, our user experience, and our continuous improvement and integration begins. So all our courses that we're running at Midi Digi at the Lighthouse Project essentially are what we describe as one working day. So they're two-hour sessions over 4 weeks. So it's 8 hours. It's a working day. So as we can see, you'll see this a lot in development. This like weird figure of eight shape. You know what I mean? It's sometimes personified a bit like a fish. It can look a bit like a fish at times as well. People do it like that. But essentially, our session one is the fundamentals of web development and lean methodology. This is session one. Session two is front end design, UX, and making a minimum viable product out of the design. Session three is the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, and best tools for the job. So, in other words, looking at what we need to do. We're trying to do this was a low code, no code kind of example of starting an MVP. We might do a little bit of custom code and things like that. And then session four, essentially, we're just going to be making this out. We're going to be building this out. We're going to be pitching and scaling the idea. So we're just going to have a brief overview of all this like web terminology that we're going to hear because this is an introduction. So I'm assuming little knowledge of this. So front end is everything that we interact with the client side. So you've got a lot of things like the HTML5 and things like that. It's what's appearing on your browser, what we click on our browser, how it looks, so on and so on. So it's our client interactions and things like that. So the sort of logos you've got there, there's certain things that I don't know, like Angular and Vue on the sort of JavaScript libraries, frameworks that will you can put stuff that displays that you can interact with. But it's a bit of an argument that that's not necessarily purely a front end technology. But essentially, the big three is HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. Back end's massive, a big back end. So you've got everything in there: your system architecture, your servers, your databases, your securities, your APIs, how we connect to other services. Business logic, operating system, scalability, frameworks, data analysis. It's huge. Data's the new oil, as they say. So how websites work. So when I first went on the internet, there was no real browser as such. It was things like news groups and file directories and things like that. So that's what you see. That's like an example of news groups that we used to see. So now we've got very extension heavy modern browsers. But back in the day, you need to know what sort of news group you were looking for, so on and so on. Then we've got like some pretty crazy browsers, that you could hit keys and go to get news stories, things like that. And then along came the Spry Mosaic, which was my first browser, which I remember really, really well. So that one, these sort of like call them bulletin boards and things like that. So you actually had then sort of hyperlinks that were pictures, all stuff like that. So that was kind of a game changer. But the big game changer really came with like Netscape Navigator. So Netscape Navigator, apart from it ending up being like a very big catalyst in the open source movement to protect itself from the sort of predatory takeover nature of Microsoft, it actually became a big game changer because one of the biggest internet service providers at the time was AOL, and they sent a disk out, and on that disk was Netscape Navigator. So most people that connected to the internet initially used Netscape Navigator. This was before Internet Explorer was even invented. And then along came, the grandfather of modern browsing. So the Netscape Navigator eventually, with the Mozilla Foundation, um, became Mozilla Firefox. So it's still a really good um, browser for developing and things like that. And it's still very, very popular out there. There's a lot of people sort of complaining it's not got the development features, it's not kept up enough with like things like Chrome and stuff like that. There's a lot out there, but essentially it's an absolute. And the Mozilla Foundation is an absolutely fantastic foundation, built on open education and accessibility, so on and so on. So I'm not going to criticise it. Everything's about file associations in what we do. So this one's just like the process of what goes on. So a user opens a browser, enters an URL, browser checks the cache to see if it's got like the address there. If it's not found, it'll send a request to a server. It receives a request and so on and so on. So it opens whatever file extension it is at the end. So essentially most browsers, it doesn't have to be, but essentially it's more .html. You can have lots and lots of other extensions. Well, that's just for simplicity here, we're going to say .html. So think about what businesses exist now to do what didn't exist like 10 or 20 years ago. If I'd have said, 15 years ago that somebody could set up teaching people how to be dog walkers, so training for dog walkers, you can actually do an NVQ in it and that. I ain't dissing dog walkers, but I'm saying these are industries that didn't exist. These are all disruptive businesses that the internet or technology really assisted in. Even Argos, because Argos didn't have a shop as such with everything on display. You went and looked in a catalogue and they had a big warehouse at the back, and you can input it on the computer. But all these things are disruptive. Like the biggest accommodation supplier in the world is Airbnb. It doesn't have a single hotel. Uber doesn't own a car. So on and so on and so on. So what we're going to do, just a little exercise just to create a basic HTML page. So we're going to open Notepad, put some text in, this text, and then we're going to save it as like index.html. Then when you open it, you will see what it does. It's quite plain, just plain black writing, all paginated down the left-hand side. So a typical file structure of a web page, if you want styles and things that move on it, is this structure where you've got an index which links to the style sheet, which links to the JavaScript, if you want JavaScript in there as well. Not a lot do. So there's another example that we can do with that. So you can see in the top there, where it's linking these references to the style sheet, and the you can't see the script one on there, but essentially that's what that's doing there. So there we go. Oh yeah, the script is at the bottom there. I just mentioned the script at the bottom. So that's linking to the JavaScript sheet that we created, document, and it's also linking to the CSS document. So it's a bit difficult to read that, but essentially, that what I'm doing there is I'm creating classes for the different parts of that HTML sheet, and then the CSS adds style to that, says what font it is, what the color's going to be, whether it's in a box, what the padding is on that box, what the margin is, etc., etc. Hover effects, animations is actually quite massive. So JavaScript, I'd say it's a little bit more functional than any of the others. So it returns outputs, can pop buttons up and things like that. So this is just the simple JavaScript that we've got in there. So this is, just pops up. You click the button when you click the button. It's all about tags, HTML tags and more tags. So that's what it does everything. I'm going to share a lot of resources with you about that. So we're going to open Notepad. There's some more stuff that we can put in. As you can see now, we've got our body tags and stuff, and we can reference the styles and all that in there, and the color. Yeah. So there we are. We're just looking at so that's like what we had inline then. So we had an inline style sheet. You can actually put inline CSS in the sheet. One of the greatest resources out there is w3schools.com. It's really good starting place to learn all of this stuff, to learn all code, to be honest with you. I think it's a brilliant resource. Another one that I love, you can do all stuff on here without having an account, but this is like the bleeding edge of what you can do with HTML, CSS and JavaScript. It's really worth exploring and have a look, and that's codepen.io. But we're going to look at low code, no code stuff for now. So we're going to look at Installatron on cPanel. We're going to look at all the different resources that we've got that we can set up our minimum viable product with. So our homework really is to modify and improve your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript page that we've just made in the class, and explore various no-code, low-code, free hosting options. There's literally loads out there, like WordPress. You can have .wordpress websites and things like that. Squarespace, Wix. There's literally like loads of them out there. So that's it. So this is week 1, and see you all next week.